Welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today I'm excited to have Will Lansing on the show. He's the founder of the Valor Companies, and he's done over $100 million in real estate development deals. We're going to be talking about how he built one of the top real estate development companies in his market, the type of creative real estate deals that he's doing right now, like firehouses and churches, and where he sees the biggest opportunities in the next 2 years in the real estate market. If you have any questions, put them in the box down below. Make sure you roundhouse kick that like button so other people just like you can find this video. And if you like money and you like real estate, this is the show for you. Hit that subscribe button and we'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Founders Club, the show for real estate entrepreneurs. So welcome, Will Lansing, to another episode of Founders Club. Happy to have you on the show and really excited to be diving into some real estate development topics and finding out all the cool things that you guys have been doing at the Valor Companies and just see what we can learn from you. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Alfred. Great to be here.
So right now, you know, with the Valor Company and all the things you guys are doing, I checked out some of the projects. They're really cool. They're bigger projects. So why don't you just kind of tell me a little bit about like what you're working on right now, and then I want to go kind of take a step on how you came into the game.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, again, great to be here. Nice to connect with everybody out there. So we've been busy. It's fortunately through the unfortunate path of the pandemic, we've been very lucky to maintain really the growth of the business, and really sort of in a combination of, as a development company, we're always balancing different stages of not only systems, but also pipeline. And so we're very in a good position where we've been building actively a couple of projects, recently just delivering, believe it or not, never thought I'd say this growing up into the business, but just delivered a fire station. Never thought in a million years I'd build a fire station, but we had a really interesting opportunity with the Washington, D.C. government on a piece of dirt that we owned. They had a need, so we did a build-to-suit deal with the D.C. government, and they're now our tenant fire station, which is really interesting. And so, again, a lot of stories around that have been kind of fun. And
yeah, actually, I before we go even further, I'd love to hear about that. I mean, it sounds like you've got the best tenant on earth.
Absolutely best.
Paying you rent every month. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so the on the deal side, really how it all came about is ended up buying a piece of just raw land from a former partner of ours. He was cleaning up his portfolio, didn't want it. Not the best location, not the best piece of dirt for what we traditionally do, which is multifamily development. But we thought, hey, there's something here eventually, and let's take a look. And so we began the entitlement process, taking in this piece of dirt through a rezoning process here, where we were going to plan to build 35 single-family townhomes. And so we spent a couple of years doing that. As we got towards the end, we were contacted by a friend of a friend who was playing golf with somebody who said, hey, the DC government's looking to relocate one of their fire stations. Do you know anybody that has, something that could work? So buddy called me up and said, hey, Will, this is out there. You ought to respond to this request for proposals. And so we did. We won it. And interesting is, we've learned through this process is that with fire and emergency medical services, they have a particular response radius that they can't really go beyond. And so as they were relocating from their old facility where they'd been since I think the 1890s, looking to relocate to this new location, they had to be within the same neighborhood. So they really can't go much beyond, this area. And we had the right piece of dirt at the right time. So we signed a deal.
And then, so how does that deal work? Did you just build them the structure and then they're paying you rent, or do you just own the dirt and they built the structure? How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So we did a build to suit. So we signed a deal where they came in early on. They gave us all of their design specifications. We built the building for them. We financed the project entirely, and then they just signed a long-term lease with us. So we have, government-backed credit, long-term lease at this place. So it turned out to be a great deal. What's also fun, Oliver, is not only on the business side, but on the personal side, as we get into this, we're talking to a meeting with a lot of the fire chief, the fire captain, the
Right.
people running the house, and just the personalities that are involved. And what's been also unique, I mean, as you know, just around the business of real estate, every deal has its own special story, its own special personalities. And on this one in particular, we had the benefit of the personalities of firefighters and life and emergency medical, response teams, and the stories that we get to hear from them. We had a groundbreaking breakfast a couple weeks ago, and just to hear some of the things these guys do is just unbelievable. And so, very much humbling for our team to be involved in something like that and really sort of serve these guys on the personal side. So really just really interesting deal.
That's a cool project. That's the first time I've heard a deal like that. So congrats.
Yeah.
That's real cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah. We're lucky.
So I know now you're playing at a real high level in development. You guys are building big multifamily stuff, fire stations, all that kind of stuff. But why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into the game, and then we'll talk about kind of how you built this big, beautiful company that you have now.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So quick disclaimer, as a kid, and I tell people the story all the time when I talk to groups, that I got my start really as a kid playing with Legos and baseball cards. And so those are my two hobbies. And, fast forward now to where I am today, I tell people I get to play Legos, as a grown up. So really I'll start back then. And then when I was a Virginia kid growing up, went to school in Virginia, grew up in Virginia. And when I graduated college, I went to school as an engineering student and survived it. When I came out, I knew that I did not want to go into engineering. I wanted something more lucrative, more fast paced. And I couldn't really figure out what that was. At the time, my girlfriend's father was he was an executive for Merrill Lynch. And he said, "Hey, you're pretty good with people. You seem sociable. Why don't you come learn the stock brokerage business under my tutelage?" And I said, "Absolutely, let's go." Well, this was December 2001, in the start of 2002. So for those viewing and listening, you'll recall this was on the heels of September 11th. And so back in those days, financial markets were just decimated. And so, here I am, a 21-year-old punk kid trying to, peddle stocks to people that had no business doing it. And however, fortuitously through that experience, I inherited a client from a senior broker at Merrill Lynch who was the guy wholesaled real estate. And I had no idea what this was. I had no idea what any of it meant, but I knew he had a lot of money flowing through his brokerage account. So I called him up and said, "I got to take you to lunch one day." And I said, "Tell me what you do for a living." And so he explained, the concept behind wholesaling real estate contracts. And at that point, I was hooked. I left the Merrill Lynch office at night around 9:00. And for 3 straight months, I would hang the "We Buy Houses" signs that everybody used to see.
Good old bandit signs.
The old bandit signs. And I'd have my cell phone number on it. And I would do this for about 3 months. And this, mind you, is in 2003. So real estate market is on fire.
Right.
And, just rode the wave right. And I got lucky that I signed a deal up about 3 months into doing that. I flipped it. I made 12 grand on that first deal. A month later, I tied up a bank-owned property, flipped that for, I think, around the same number. And I said, in these 2 deals, I'm going to make more than my first year as a stockbroker. So I said, this is it.
Yeah. You saw the light.
Saw it and felt it. It felt great. And
in your early 20s, making 12 grand in one deal, it's a game changer.
It's huge. It's huge. And at that point, still didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was still, it was sort of the how-to book at that point. So still real nervous and fumbling my way through, but got really lucky in that one of the guys I flipped one of my first deals to, later that year became a business partner of mine. We actually partnered up 3 of us and started a business that focused on nothing but single family fix and flip, fix and renovate and sell. And so that's how I really cut my teeth in the real estate business, was sort of the launching of that with a couple of partners. We, again, very lucky in terms of timing. We had some brains too, I think, but the time was perfect for us in that we rode that residential wave. So through 2003 to 2007, we grew a significant single family buy, fix and sell business. We were buying 20 houses a month
Wow.
We grew up to a staff of 16 people. We had a dedicated call center that was taking all of our incoming leads. We had internal sales staff, external sales staff. We had 4 different fully committed construction companies working for us exclusively. We were running television advertisements. We were spending $1 million a year on TV ads. And, through that experience, we grew a legitimate real estate investment business, but again, focused on primarily single family real estate. And through that, learned a tremendous amount about, growth of business, sales, systemizing the business, and just real estate in general. Again,
because permitting, contractors, the whole deal.
The whole 9 yards, and then the whole full circle. And so it was kind of, in those days, it was a bit of the Wild West. And here we were, a few 20 and 30 somethings launching this business. So it was amazing. It was a great learning experience. Had a lot of fun doing it. Great people. And then that was really what got me into the development space around 2007. Not because we saw what was coming. It was really just a sort of a divergence of interests. I wanted to get more involved in some of the larger scale projects that you could really sort of touch and feel, the tangible, if you will. Yeah. And so that's what then led us to start, really what was to be later known as the Valor Companies from there.
Very cool. I love how you started with wholesaling, found some success with that, found some traction, then transitioned that into fix and flips. Sounds like you built quite the fix and flip operation, and then kind of graduated, like a lot of people do, up into the bigger development type projects.
Exactly. Yeah.
And one thing we kind of coach agents on, and just real estate professionals in general, is really learning how to do those wholesale deals, because when we're out there, we're in the trenches, we're on the front lines oftentimes, and you'll come across great deals, even if it's only 1 or 2 a year. If you can just take that 1 or 2, wholesale it off to an investor, you'll make yourself a good amount of money and not have to do a tremendous amount of work, and there's not a whole lot of risk involved.
Totally. It's a great business model. And you're right. It's, even if it's only 1 or 2 a year, when you find those, diamonds in the rough that aren't marketed, it's a great business model. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. So did you have a mentor when you learned how to do that, or were you just like learning out of books, or what gave you the confidence to do those first couple deals?
Yeah, it was really out of books. There was an online course. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm going to forget the guy's name now. It was a gentleman out of Baltimore, Maryland, who published a course, and I think for $99, I bought it online. And I just followed it to a T, and it had all the scripts and templates and, contract examples. And I mean, that first deal that I signed up, I mean, it was deer in headlights. I didn't know what the contracts, I didn't understand half the contract, but it worked. So, from there, and then as time went on, one of the gentlemen involved in our first home buying business, he was probably 78 years old than I was. And he was farther along in business. He'd come from a real estate background. So I looked at him as a bit of a mentor. He really sort of helped me out as we grew the business and I came along professionally. So do owe it certainly to him in starting out. And along the way have just tried to align myself with, more seasoned real estate folks and be in various networking meetings, that sort of thing, to just, try to be growing every chance that I can.
Yeah. I'm sure those first couple deals, you didn't really know what you were doing, but I think that's the moral of the story, is you're not always going to know what you're doing, but if you just start doing it, the results can come.
That's right. You just got to go. You got to go.
Yeah.
Head down.
So then, to take me through then the transition from kind of like fix and flip, like small scale, single family homes, to like getting into the bigger development space. Talk to me about that transition.
Yeah, so interesting and very different. Took some adjustment, because I came from a business that we had built that was completely systematized, very transactional. We were, again, talking, 15, 20, 25 houses per month on the front end, and then equally the same on the back end, to now, evolving into a business model where, and mind you, in that business model, to your point, Oliver, with flips and whatnot, there tends to be a nice monthly pop or weekly pop, depending on how many transactions you have. And so to go from that to more of the development model where
I'm not going to get paid for 2 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. If you're lucky, in some it could be 4 or 5 years. It's
right.
Yeah. So the bigger pops, and they just take so being good with that sort of patience, I think was an important thing that we had to get our head around very quickly. Complexity of the deals. What I found is that getting into the development space, there felt like a sort of a more institutional level of things you were dealing with. Financing structures got a bit more interesting. The contractors that we were now working with, the contract language was not, I guess it was a bit different, more thorough. Insurance was different. So just, it sort of ratchets up the bar, I think, on every level. And so, getting used to that took some adjustment. And then really finding opportunities. That was really the biggest shift. Because they are really few and far between, at that level where you're competing with institutional people that have endless money, Wall Street money. And,
that's the challenge, is you're competing with the people that have all the money.
Exactly.
And are willing to overspend.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's what we tell people is like, look, unless it's something that's off market or it's a relationship based transaction, we're probably not going to be the guys, because we don't pay like the 800-pound gorilla, down the street, or the institutional backed, private equity fund out of New York, that sort of thing. So it's a different playing field. One of the biggest things that really drew me into the space, I think, as I mentioned, is really sort of the tangible nature of these things. Mm-hmm. Why I loved, the fix and flip business initially is because I loved being the guy walking the vacant house or the rundown house and saying, I can see when we do all these things, at the end, again, Legos for grownups, right? I mean, that was sort of the thing. And as the fix and flip business grew, systems became in place, employees became involved, and I sort of distanced myself from, that sort of love of the touchy-feely stuff. And so in the development space, you're still putting systems in place and people, but I feel like because the transactions are fewer and farther between, and because we're involved in building these things from the ground up, you're very close to that sort of tangible thing that's always excited me. And so again, I guess back to the question of just, the differences of getting into that space. Again, there's additional layers and levels of complexity. There's different risk factors, I think, that, are involved in this level. You're now talking to, whereas before in the fix and flip business, as you capitalize some of these deals, if you're buying them quickly, maybe might have been all cash, it might have been hard money lenders, might have been a bank. On this level, you're generally dealing with, multiple layers of capital within your capital structure. And so each one of those is its own personality, its own negotiation. Design is, the designs we used to do for our single family homes versus now a 200-unit apartment building, very different in terms of coordination. You've got many more consultants involved. You've got many more people around this thing, looking at it, watching it, and babysitting it. To your point earlier, time, tack on, other years to the timeline of finishing it. So a lot more stuff to just think about and consider getting into it.
And so you've done that journey successfully. So what tips would you have for people that kind of want to go into that next level of, either development or multifamily? Because some people can't even wrap their head around like buying a fourplex versus just buying a single family, let alone, buying and or developing a 30 to 50 unit building.
Right. Yeah. No, great
So talk to me about that mental shift and like the transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell this to groups all the time. I talk about it. Two of the things that I try to impart to people that I think is important, no matter what business you're in or your professional growth is. One, understand the business of people and know it well. And Oliver, I want to comment to you because I know in reading up and hearing about you, I know you're a fan of Dale Carnegie and folks like that. And that was the book that, again, growing up, that I read and I have hung on to and said that is one of the best business books you never read, because it teaches you the business of people. And so having that perspective and understanding, how you navigate certain personalities and you handle people the right way, coming into the development business from the fix and flip business. You need that there too, but I think you need to come into that with eyes wide open, because just like the fix and flip business, the competition is fierce. The personalities are varied, they're different, and you've got the consequences are significant here, where you need to be able to make sure you're handling people correctly, whether it be attorneys, whether it be land sellers, whether it be your equity partner, whether it be your bank, whether it be your, you name it. It's just there's a lot of personalities to really sort of manage. The second thing, and I think it's really sort of the mindset or lessons in resiliency, and it's really you have to have that fortitude going in and saying, no matter what happens, I'm not giving up. This is going to be a challenge in a really big way, and I'm not going to give up. And that's really of the folks that I know in the business and the people you sort of read about that have made a career, any real estate venture, right? I mean, again, we're all sort of in this place where we're working deals, whether it be systemized, multiple transactional deals or one-off deals. And that's, I think, the mindset that's important for everybody, is that you can't give up, because for us, in what I've experienced is, especially during the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, what you find is you find things along the way that really slow the path of your projects. I mean, we get hung up with lawsuits, we get hung up with permit issues, we get hung up with neighbors that aren't happy with certain things happening. And when you're talking about a project that is capitalized to the tune of 30, 40, 50, 60, $100 million, a 3-month delay, you feel that.
Big time.
Yeah. And so you have to, and those happen, and you have to sort of prepare for those. And so I think it's again, that, being ready to deal with people the right way, having that mental, fortitude to, you push through whatever you have to push through the right way, of course. But I think those are lessons, in the world of developers that really are important, sort of getting into it.
Yeah. I think the critical thing that I heard you say that I couldn't agree with more, and the one trait I kind of see across all the successful real estate developers that we know, is the never giving upness. Like, the amount of times I see them just get kicked in the face and just dust themselves off, get back up, and keep going is extremely impressive. And I think that's what separates the good developers from the people that, get smoked.
Yeah, it's a great observation. It's somebody told it to me the other day. They said the word they think that it's grit, and I think that encompasses it perfectly. It's just you got to have grit. You got to wake up every day, ready to get hammered, and but eventually you know how to dance around it, you know how to move, and yeah.
There you go. So that's a good one right there for sure. So what type of deals are you guys doing now? What's kind of in the pipeline? What do you got coming up?
Yeah. So interesting. So, and going back to some of the lessons, and some of your other guests on the podcast, that, we've, using the word pivot, that's come up, I know, a handful of times in recent podcasts. And we've been students of that ourselves. The multifamily business, the apartments, those continue to truck along nicely. And for our business model, again, because these things take 3, 4, 5 years to get to the finish line, we have a couple that are in entitlement still. So we're taking them through that rezoning process, just, waiting to get through that before we can actually begin construction. And so while those are happening, we've advanced other pipeline. And what we've found is an interesting opportunity, not interesting niche. And I'm hoping this is sort of helpful to your audience out there, because I think that it really, it certainly grows beyond our local and regional market. And it's really something that nationwide is an opportunity. And that's in the space of faith-based development. I was very lucky to come across a local church here a handful of years ago, and they had fallen victim to a devastating fire to their building. There had been a bunch of shenanigans by other developers who tried to really just take their property, and we had stepped in late in the process, but we were able to really help revitalize that building and do a deal with the church as a partner of theirs, where we restored this beautiful, historic limestone, historically significant church, added housing to it in the form of an 8-story tower, and we converted it to this award-winning, apartment building. And so
Very cool.
by doing that, as you might expect in the faith-based community, it's a very tight-knit community, and you obviously need to make sure you keep a good name. And if you do, they tend to advocate for you. And so as a result of that, we've been very fortunate to find ourselves in a place where we're advising a significant number of faith-based groups on their real estate. And because if you think about it, what's happened, certainly leading up to COVID, and certainly COVID highlighted this for them, is that the business of church has changed. No longer are the congregations as large as they once were. Churches are moving online, so the necessity for these grand old spaces in these what tend to be amazing locations, they're just not there anymore. And because of that, collections are down. The churches can't afford the upkeep of the real estate, so they have all this, this significant, capital expenditure needed to upkeep them, and they just can't afford it. And so, you want to save them from the old story and the horror story of, here comes the big bad developer stealing the church for pennies on the dollar. And so what we've done is we've said, we want to come partner with you. We want to help you. We want to help you analyze your real estate, and let's find a way where you can still maintain this historic and very special place that you've fought to keep for 100+ years. Let us restore that to its grandeur. And then with the balance of either your building space or density, that's many times it's density that's unused, let us find a way to develop that for you. And then everybody gets to participate in the economics. And so, the win-win-win is the church has this, restored facility that allows them to continue on their mission and continue on for another 100 years and encourage, the growth of the community that they helped really create and found. And then they have economics coming out of this new housing that's been built. And then from the developer side, again, for all the real estate, folks, I mean, it's a tremendous deal from a risk perspective, an execution perspective, because in many cases, these churches have little to no debt. And so from an equity perspective, it's minimal. Your risk is just, it's the right mix. And so we've been working with churches to advance, this type of business, and it's become very popular. And it's a really good thing. It's a really good thing.
That's a brilliant little niche. I've never heard that one before. That's let me just recap that, see if I'm picking up what you're putting down. So you're finding churches that are have some sort of financial need to either redevelop or downsize or reposition their properties that they're owning. You're coming in as a solution provider saying, hey, let's like JV on this deal, and we'll come in, we'll build, we'll make it beautiful, we'll bring it into the future with whatever media rooms and whatever else they need. And then in addition, you're adding units on those properties so that people in the congregation can actually live on the site, and then you and the church participate in that rev share.
That's right. Yeah. The different what we found thus far is we're not seeing something where the parishioners or congregation are actually moving into the housing, but everything else spot on. Yep. Church gets.
So really, I guess anyone could move into the housing, right? As long as they're paying the bills.
Yep.
And then you guys win, and the church wins.
Exactly. And what's amazing is this is something, as you think about this on a larger scale. Again, this is nationwide. Is that the number of churches that are out there? They're countless. I mean, there are so many. And so this playbook can be effective anywhere. And then if you also think about it from from the standpoint of affordable housing, these deals, they vary depending upon where they are. So, these churches, if they're, right downtown of a major MSA, the likelihood is that when you do this sort of thing, you can provide, or you can create either market rate condominiums or market rate apartments, and it's all market rate housing. In other, other parts of the country, other, locations, it may not serve well to do market rate just because, the costs don't support, it just doesn't support, sort of where values are. However, from an affordable housing perspective, that's where you can look at, LIHTC and executions like that, where you've got tax credits. and the deal makes great sense. And you can also consider looking at these things potentially, from an economic structure where maybe you start to involve ground leases. So there's a whole world of things happening here, and I think that we're going to see some evolution here, and I think we're going to see some things where, again, across the country, this becomes popular because, again, it's a win for everybody involved. It's one of those true win-win-wins. So
yeah, I love it. That's real estate development creativity at its finest, right there.
It's right outside the box. That's right.
Yeah, for sure. So then. You kind of mentioned it earlier, but just how competitive the market is and things like that, and how people are throwing crazy money around right now. So what are you guys doing to like find good deals and get ahead of, these big dollar individuals?
Yeah, great question. It's hard. It is really, because the to your point, the big dollar guys, there's so much money in the marketplace that are chasing things. We see things come across our desk all the time, and we scratch our head saying, we don't understand how anybody gets out of this thing making money. So It's as if these guys, they're spending money to spend it. So for us, we've been very fortunate to buy things, earlier on. So we've got some different tentacles out there in the marketplace that are a little bit different than others. Because we've been doing this for quite a while, most of the stuff that we get, actually all the stuff we get, is really off market. So we have relationships with attorneys, settlement companies. We tend to find good opportunities coming to us by way of our extended team, if you will. So if you think about it, we engage a general contractor to build an apartment building. We've been given opportunities by way of the general contractor who will call us up and say, hey, we spec this thing for a group, they can't get it off the ground, they need some help. Would you have interest in coming in and taking it over or buying it? And same thing with attorneys, architects. So we really get fed from our team. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned, sort of the church type of avenue, we find ourselves into, some strategic relationships that way, where we're sourcing opportunities for ourselves. So really, again, pivoting and trying to find, different ways to generate business.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great point on just leveraging your team. We do multifamily projects out in Arizona, and one of the best ways we've found is through property managers, because the property managers, of these bigger buildings, let's say 10 plus unit buildings, they're generally going to know first if the owner wants to sell. And if you can go out and make good relationships with those people, maybe even include them on the deal if they bring the lead or whatever, then, that's a great source of business. And it sounds like you're doing the same with lawyers. And I like the idea of, people that have gotten to a certain stage in a project, but can't get it across the line, and just kind of picking those ones up.
Yeah.
So that's
good. You're right, man. The management side, that's brilliant. You're right, because that's the first. They know someone's selling, they know someone's in trouble, and that's a great place to source those things. And there's a lot of management companies out there, and to your point as well, you cut them into the deal, you make them a piece of it. We do that with some of our attorneys. We give them a slice of the equity if they want to roll fees in, or if they find deals. And so it's, again, everybody wins. It's sort of that's the mantra when you're talking about things of this size. There's a lot of meat there. On the table, and so it's everybody. And
I do think that's another one of the keys to real estate development is that whole piece.
Yeah, it's true. Well, because again, it's we're about doing the right thing, and as
creating
as you know,
for everybody.
Yeah. And as you all know, lasting in the business. This is a hard business on every level. Real estate in general, and so those that have built a career out of it, who've been doing this for 15, 20, 30 plus years, they've done it because they have a good name and they take care of people. And, that gives us the opportunity to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's a small world. Never burn those bridges.
It really is.
Okay, cool. So then, you're doing these multifamily deals. I like the church angle. I like all these things. So what's your general exit strategy on the deals that you're doing?
Great question. So it's a mix, and it's really depending upon what they are. We'll find in the markets that we operate, which is really we're East Coast at this point in time. We find that we will do when we're doing projects that are sort of in the, call it 30 to 50 unit range, again, at least where we're based. If it's in sort of the major MSA and in the city limits, those tend to be highest and best use from a return perspective to be for sale condominiums. Those are also nice size projects because you're not really biting off a ton of units that the market has to absorb from a sales perspective.
Right.
And so that's kind of a safe place to play. Sometimes we've done a couple that are sort of in the 70 to 80 unit range. That's probably about as big as we go on sales. And so that's sort of one path. And again, what drives us there is really sort of the deal size and then really some of the components, right? So some of the other things that don't necessarily come into play with the fix and flip or single family business is when you get into development, you've got different construction types. And so depending upon really where you are, you may be building something out of, full blown, well, not full blown, but you've got some element of concrete as really what they call a podium, which is really sort of your basement first floor. And then everything above could be built out of wood, which is a wood frame building. Those generally tend to be the least expensive to build. Although these days with where materials prices are, that's right. Yeah. Yes. And then you've got, so you traditionally though that's been sort of the lower end cost wise. You then have something that's built out of what they call lead gauge metal. It's a metal frame building, which allows you to go higher in terms of elevate or in terms of height, cost a bit more. And then, the most expensive is generally concrete. And that's what you see all the tall buildings built like concrete. So from that perspective, you've got different cost considerations to make. Yeah. And you do that based upon, okay, well, how much am I paying for this dirt? Where is the dirt? How big can the building be? And so there's all these different formulations, calculations you have to play with to first solve the puzzle as to what's the most economical way that I can build what I want to build here. And then based upon that, is it going to be, am I going to hold it as rental units, or am I going to sell it as condominiums? And so these all sort of come into play into the recipe. And so, but traditionally that 50, 60, 70 unit size would likely be probably a for sale. And then things that get into the 100 to 200 unit plus for us would be apartments, simply because when we get to that size, we're generally going to be building things out of metal and concrete. Right. Larger floor plates, larger buildings, taller buildings. And then again, that size allows for good operational efficiency. When you start talking about management companies and operating the business, that's where you start to really find that efficiency. So that's really, it's really deal dependent for us. We would love to hold everything that we build, just because the goal for us is to build a portfolio that, is a legacy for family and that sort of thing. But some of the deals, just because of where they are and what they cost, we have to exit as condos because it just makes sense to return the capital.
Yeah, most definitely. Those are great tips. I definitely agree. It does all depend on a lot of factors. Obviously, where the market is at the time as well, because if it takes you 2, 3, 4, 5 years to put a project together, the market's going to definitely be different than the day you started. So, you might need to hold it longer, or if the market's red hot like it is right now, say, hey, let's exit this one.
Time to sell. Yep. Yeah. And I'll to your point there, it's when we, as part of one of the other things that now that we're talking to some of the things to prepare the change, in the development world, when we get ready to build these things, there's a whole process involved in, it's really local politics, but there's a whole process involved in getting these projects supported on a community level. And so in most major cities, if you want to do any kind of rezoning, you're going through neighborhood action groups, you're going through conservancies, you're going through boards of zoning adjustments, zoning commissions, this whole thing. And this takes, a couple of years. And it's funny when you say, after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the market's changing, we get asked the question all the time at the beginning, say, what's this going to be? And we have to say, well, we don't know yet. Because when this thing delivers in 5 years, it's going to be a completely different market. And so we're going to plan for this to really go either way, as for sale or for apartments. And when we get close to the finish line, we'll make that call. So that's another factor, is that, that timeline, you just got to keep your eyes open and sort of plan for any which way at the end of the day.
Yeah. Got to be flexible.
That's right.
So what about in terms of, over the next like 2 years? Like, where do you see the best real estate development opportunities over the next couple years coming up?
Yeah, great question too. It's funny. You'd think that that amidst COVID there would be this tidal wave of distress, and it just, a lot of the people that I think predicted that are sort of, chewing on their foot, because it hasn't happened. And what we've heard and what we've seen, at least in where we operate, is that people have held on. They've been able to survive this, which is good. Now, what does that mean, and where do we now find sort of the opportunity? I think what we're going to continue to see is, I think it's really, the multifamily space is going to continue to grow. We as a nation are still, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. And we cannot keep up with the demand. And so I think that's going to always naturally lend to, sort of I don't want to say endless, but certainly a continuing need for new housing. And so there's going to continue to be this desire for multifamily development. And where you find those opportunities, I think, really is, as cities grow, just sort of the natural progression of sprawl. There is, we've seen it in the cities that we operate in, and we hear it from friends and, across the country, that they're just, the city boundaries grow, and, things push out, and prices continue to move out. And so I think that's going to continue. It's interesting to see sort of, where does the office market go? There's a whole
that's true
mix of things, disrupting that space, and where's that going to land? And, certainly industrial seems to be, a favored flavor at the moment, for many, in terms of the growth of that. And so I think there's opportunities there. Hospitality is, I think that's going to be an interesting play. We actually have a hospitality project that we're in the works on right now. And that is one area that we've seen distress hit as a result of the pandemic. We've seen things close. And
that's probably been the hardest hit.
In a big way, right? I mean, the restaurants, the retail, the hotels. And so, but now that things are opening back up and people are, wanting to live again, there seems to be this floodgate of just pent up, let's get going. And so we're already seeing it. We're operating. We're seeing, things getting moving in that space again. So I think there's some opportunity there as well, as people look forward over the next couple of years. So there's lots of good pockets.
And I think your point about kind of just watching the areas that are growing. I mean, at the end of the day, that's always the name of the game in real estate. If you can either get in the path of progress, or there's right now there's a lot of migration happening. So if you can watch the migration patterns on where people are moving to, obviously those are going to be where the opportunities present themselves.
That's right. Great places to be. That's right. Yep.
Cool. And then as far as how you're packaging these deals and financing them, how are you guys doing that? Are these syndications? Are these privately financed? What are you guys doing there?
Yeah, it's a mix. So it really sort of deal dependent. The traditional model of regional sort of bank debt that gets us into the deal, gets whatever it is built or renovated. And with that, it's personal, friends and family equity generally, at least as we started the business. And then as things have become more complex, what we found is in that structuring, we're doing a mix of things. We've got the traditional model of, again, regional debt, friends and family, personal equity on some. On others, we've got more, I'd say, it's all institutional, but we've got more institutional level, sort of debt providers. We've got life insurance companies, those types providing debt, also providing some type of equity as well to come in with us. So we have institutional equity coming into the capital structure. I mentioned earlier, when talking about the church opportunities, we're also looking at ground leases to capitalize projects, which, I know they've been around for a long time. It seems that it's, depending upon where you are in the country, they're either old hat or they're sort of this new shiny object. And I think for us, it tends to be on the newer side where we operate.
For us too, as well. That's definitely not a big thing here in San Diego.
And what's amazing is, and there's large institutional groups now coming out and doing this on a broad scale, and very like a good system to it. So it's not this what I feel like you used to find in that space of capitalizing is you'd find these handful of high net worth guys that were just kind of cowboys, and they just sort of find, well, they're now institutional providers of this capital. And it's a really efficient way to capitalize things. So we're looking at that in some cases as well. That gets a little not complicated, but there's a little nuance because you're taking your fee simple ownership and you're bifurcating it into a leasehold and a leased fee. You're selling your leased fee to some buyer. They're paying all this money, but then that provides you cheap equity to then roll into your leasehold estate. But then you're subject to a ground lease. So there's nuance to them. So there's a lot of different creative ways. I'll tell you, we've done some business in the EB5 space. I'm not sure if that's come across sort of from folks on the platform, but
tell me about that.
So EB5 is a program where it's sort of out of the country investors are encouraged to invest in the U.S. through what they call U.S. I think they're called regional centers. So these are centers that have to go through an application process. They're approved by the federal government to effectively collect money from outside investors. There's a whole reporting requirement, and what that allows you to do is you can source this capital very inexpensively from these outside investors. And the promise to them is they get a visa and they get their money paid back over a certain period of time. It's regulated heavily, and there's all sorts of change going on right now in the regulations. We haven't been able to keep up with it, but things are changing. But we've worked with a regional center on a couple of projects, and we found that to be interesting because it provides either very cost efficient debt or cost efficient equity. And you just have to, the projects themselves, which this works well for development projects, because in order to qualify for this money, you have to show that you're creating jobs. And so that's easily done when you're talking about a $40 million construction project. And at the end of that construction project, you've got a hotel that's hiring, 80 people. So for situations like that, it works very, very well. So that's something else we worked with. There's something in the market called PACE financing that we're working with as well. That's a tax assessment. In fact, that's a big thing in San Diego. I'm actually talking to a PACE lender out of San Diego right now on a deal. So that's a big, efficient plug of capital as well. That comes into the capital stack in the form of a tax assessment. It's really it's attached to the property's tax assessment, but it's structured in the form of an amortizing loan. So for banks that will let you do that, it's a cheap form of equity. And the way you qualify for that is the project has to provide or create so many environmental energy type savings. There's a whole program to it. So there's some really interesting financing solutions that are coming out these days. And I find every 6 months something new pops up. They're all getting traction. And so there's some really interesting and unique ways to capitalize these things.
I love that. I'm definitely checking both of those out. I wrote down PACE and EB5.
Yep, you got it, man. You got it.
Definitely checking those out. Very cool. What about just kind of general tips for people wanting to get into real estate development? What kind of tips do you have for them?
Boy, it's I'd say it's really it falls into probably the same categories as as any sort of entrepreneur or anybody that wants to really mind to be successful in any business. But as I sort of mentioned, I think all of us here in this real estate space, we're sort of cut from a cloth where, we like the deals, we like the fast pace, we like the thrill and the seek and the chase. And so I think with that, it's, getting into it, just being mindful of some things, sort of growth hacks that are going to help you, move forward and not stumble. Because as we've all, I'm sure, seen, we know in our own networks, people that have tried this business real estate and they haven't made it. And so, again, I got into the business because I loved the deal. I loved the tangible nature of the deal. I had to quickly learn that that's great, but you can't be the guy doing everything. And so very much systematize. And so we were a big proponent of that early on in our first business, and systematizing the business as much as we can. It's sort of the E-Myth. If those that have read the E-Myth book, you want to get to a place where you're working on the business, not in the business. And so I think that's sort of one key point to just be aware of, eyes open, that when you get to a certain place, you need to systematize, otherwise you're going to burn out. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, I think above probably all else, it is understanding the business of people. And, because a lot of people, which shocks me, they fail to do that. And I find that in interactions we have in our business, people that we have meetings with, and I walk out of the meeting going, this guy or gal just has no clue. And as a result, we'll never do business with them. And so find that place where, or getting that to yourself to that place where, it's a learned skill, I think. And so, reference the Dale Carnegie books. We did with our business, we invested a lot of money in bringing in a group that helped us to the idea of systems, but we create an actual sales system. And so for those people that don't feel like they're salesy enough or good with people, they just had to follow the system. And by doing enough of it, they became phenomenal. It was based upon the Sandler sales system, which was really the adage of you want people to like you, trust you, and want to do business with you. And if you can do that and you've got that personality, that's going to lead you to success no matter what path you're on. So I think that's a key thing, is you've got to be very, very mindful of that, of the business of people. Be humble, start off right with people and handle them very well with respect. And that will lead you a very, very long way in this business.
And the grittiness, just be prepared to take a punch and get back up again and keep right on going.
That's right. Just you never give up. Never give up. There was a speech that I think he's admiral. There's an admiral that gave a talk to keynote speech to, I think it was the University of Austin, Texas, back 5-6 years ago, and he talked through Navy SEALs training, what that meant, and how the lessons of Navy SEALs training, can carry you through life. And I'll never forget hearing this. General McCraven is his name. His last part of the keynote was the number one lesson was just never give up. The Navy SEALs could ring that bell at the training camp, and that would relieve them of all the hell they're going through, and they could just leave. And he just said, never give up. And that's something I tell the people that work for us, the people I talk to, that, just never give up. You'll get through it.
I love it.
Have that grit.
Yeah, I love it. That's very, very good. Very good advice. So what's next for you guys? What's coming up?
Yeah, we're going to stay busy with the real estate. Again, it's in the blood, it's in the DNA at this point. We love doing it, and it's again all these different deals that tell all these interesting stories. We just love doing it. So we're going to continue to keep ourselves busy there. We've got some things coming on the pipe. I'm in the process of writing a book.
Cool.
So that's going to be coming out here in the next 6 to 12 months. So we just would encourage people to sort of stay close to us for that. And it's on the lesson of resiliency. It's really sort of the story of, again, not giving up and really going through anecdotally many of the things that I've lived through as an entrepreneur, as a real estate investor and developer. Again, really coming from, nothing and humble beginnings and the things that, the average guy or gal is going to face on the road of life, because, these are things that college and school don't teach us. And so these are things that people have to be prepared to do. And then, looking forward to continuing to, speaking to groups and getting out there and encouraging people to, chase the passion and find that success for themselves. Looking forward to some good things ahead.
Definitely. Well, it sounds like you guys are right on the right path. We wish you all the best in your continued success. One of the questions I like to kind of ask everyone is, do you have any tools, apps, softwares that you just love that save you time, money, energy, any of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, Oliver. No, it's so one of the things that we did is that tools wise from a sales perspective, sales program, big on the Sandler sales training program, that we create an entire system around that, pretty easy to sort of build upon. From a tech side of things, we've built all of our applications. So our businesses run on an automated workflow back end. So every document we sign goes into it. It's all automated. Every step along our process is all is followed. It's all and so we do all in QuickBase. So QuickBase is a highly customizable in the cloud hosted software platform. It's actually the platform behind QuickBooks, which I'm sure most people sort of run accounting on, but this is they do a sort of more of a generalized, database CRM. You can customize it, and we've been running that for a long time. Great piece of technology. You can get it on the phone. Big user of virtual admins. again, they just, these days, especially where we've been able to move a lot of our business virtual, virtual admins have been a key, and they're touch points for a lot of different parts of our business.
And are you using an agency to find those VAs, or do you just go to like Upwork and Fiverr, or what? How do you?
We do all the above. Yeah, Upwork, Fiverr. We've actually also used. There's a site. Boy, it escapes me. Filipino, hire Filipino. I can drop this to you offline.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
We found some good resources there as well.
I just found another one that's virtuallatinos.com.
There you go. Yeah. It's great. It really is. They do really good work.
Especially for tasks that, can be easily replicated, templatized, systematized, that are just a process, and they can just go in there and bang, 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 bang. They can do those all day.
That's right. They just follow along. And then something personally that I use, which is, I think, helpful along the lines of again, this idea of resiliency and grit. 5-minute journal. It's an app you can grab on the phone, and it's really just, taking the time as entrepreneurs. I do this every evening. I take 5 minutes and really just reflect. And what I do in that journal is I write down, or I log, here's challenges I faced today. Here's those successes. And they may be small, but it's amazing when you start to get in that routine of logging those and reviewing them after, call it a month, what you've accumulated in the form of what you might consider small successes. It really sort of keeps you going, keeps your mindset right, and keeps you charging through when you're facing, challenges. So that's been a really, really good personal tool for me.
That's a really great one, because I do something similar. I write down 3 wins every day in my notebook, my yellow pad here. Yeah. And the days that you get punched in the face as an entrepreneur, or you're just having a shitty day, or you're just not feeling it for whatever reason, and going back and just reviewing all those things and all the things you've gotten done and all the accomplishments and seeing the things just stack, it's super motivating. And it's always good to just revisit those, and it helps you get right back on the horse and keep going.
It totally does. Like, look what I've done in this amount of time. Look how far I've come. It hadn't felt like it. Wow. And then it does. Totally just recharges, and you're back at it. Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Well, I love those. Those are definitely very cool. I'll check those out. I've never heard of QuickBase, so I'm definitely going to check that one out. And then last question I always like to ask everyone is, I have 2 young boys at home, and if you were going to coach them on how to be successful in life, what would you tell them?
Well, congrats first off on the young man. That's awesome. That's awesome. Great dad there. I think the first, again, is people. It's really it is understanding the value of relationship with people and how to treat people the right way. It's funny. I tell people this story too. I've encountered and had business partners in the past that did not work this way, and as a result, people don't want to do business with you. So reading the lessons of the Dale Carnegies and really taking that to heart and really making that a part of your being, it pays dividends just beyond belief. Because it is. People want to associate with you. They want to work with you. They will trust you. And it is a meaningful and significant difference to those that aren't. And so I think that's number one. Just, learn the business, appreciate the business, and study the business of people so that you can be good in that space. And I think the second is just, put your head down, and just, if you want it, you work for it till you get there. And understand that there's going to be obstacles. There are going to be things that the textbooks don't teach you. There are going to be things that mom and dad have not been able to really show you, because we've tried to provide a good life for you. But when you hit the real world, there are going to be challenges that come at you that are totally unexpected. You're not ready for, but be okay with that. Be okay. You may fail, and that's okay. That's just part of the process. It's how you handle that failure is what leads you to sort of your ultimate success. Do you get up and sort of shake it off and move on, or do you let it take you down? And
there it is. Perfect. And there's no trophies for second place, so let's go.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, really appreciate your time, Will. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Guys, if you have any questions, put them in the box down below. We always circle back on those. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button so we can get this out to more people. And if you like money and you like real estate, hit that subscribe button because this is the show for you. And we'll see you on the next one.
Oliver, thanks, man.